Richard Koo, he's chief economist at Nomura in Tokyo. Richard, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Oh, quite welcome.
Richard, we were speaking to our man in Tokyo there about the likelihood of Japan intervening again after it intervened last week. Do you think that's an inevitability?
Well, if it goes any further, that can happen. And in this time around, it may be actually good for the U.S. that Japanese government is coming in to buy both the U.S. Treasuries and the dollar if there is really a crisis of confidence.
But does acting alone ultimately work, acting unilaterally? Surely it would be much better if the G7 as a whole acted with Japan, which, of course, in its statement, it says it could do. Well,
that's likely, but I would like to put the story back to the downgrade. You know, this is the first time U.S. got downgraded, and that's why the whole world is very worried about it. Asian stock markets worried about it. But we went through this in Japan. We lost our top rating, and then we were continuously downgraded to the level below Botswana in Africa at one point. And when the downgrade started, people were very upset, just like how people are upset all around the world today. But once people start reading, especially in Japan, those reasons for downgrades, people start saying, these rating agencies don't know what they're talking about. I mean, Japan was not affected by those problems. It's affected by basically balance sheet problems, which is the case in the United States today as well. And the investors who are at the forefront of this balance sheet corrections of the private sector come to realize that there's no point in listening to these rating agencies. They don't understand the disease we have. And so the market basically ignored it. And so the bond rate, instead of skyrocketing, kept on coming down throughout the entire period. And it's still down to up to the most recent period. And my sense is that because U.S. has the same disease as the Japanese, where private sector is deleveraging with zero interest rates, what I call balance sheet recession, I think investors should be more careful not to just worry about the downgrades, but to see whether the policy recommendations coming from S&P are the correct ones. And I think they're completely missing the point. United States must maintain certain fiscal stimulus just to keep the GDP going when the private sector is deleveraging. But S&P is telling the United States to cut another couple $1 trillion from its budget deficit, and that will really make the situation worse for the U.S.
So, Richard, are we seeing history repeat itself here? Is the U.S. heading the way of Japan?
Well, I'm afraid it's going exactly the same way, exactly the same problems, and exactly the same confusion. And the confusion comes not from the lack of leadership, as some people claim, but lack of consensus. Because this type of recession, what I call balance sheet recession, does not happen very often. It only happens after bursting of a nationwide asset price bubble financed with debt. And the last time anything like this happened for the United States was the Great Depression. That was 80 years ago. And economics profession never taught us how to react to this type of recession, where private sector is minimizing debt instead of maximizing profits. And so there's so many different ideas of what is the right thing to do. It's like a bunch of doctors arguing over how to cure this patient having this unknown disease. But once the disease is identified and how that mechanism works, then all this debate should end. And in order to end this debate, I hope more people in the United States will look at what happened to Japan, that private sector was deleveraging, interest rates were low for a very long time, but it had no effect. And it literally took Japanese government to keep the GDP from collapsing.
But very quickly, Richard, the US hasn't got the money to throw more fiscal means at the problem, and politically, it's just not going to happen. So where are we heading, taking that into account?
Politically, that is true, but physically, that is not true at all. Look at the bond yield in the United States, even after all these talks. It's still 2.53% for a country running 9% budget deficit. That means the market is understanding that this is a Japanese disease. This is the balance sheet recession. Only the politicians, some academics who are saying, no, we cannot use fiscal stimulus anymore. That is patently not true. It is possible, and what has to be done is that President Obama should come out and tell people that this is a very special type of disease requiring these treatments.
Richard, thank you very much. Always a pleasure to talk to you there. Richard Koo there, chief economist at Nomura in Tokyo.